Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show and our midweek non-league show here on the channel. I'm Chris Bell, and I'm delighted to say joining us tonight are Lewis Sale and FC Halifax Town superfan and Shaman Stats, Dave Foy. How are we, gents? Are we well?
Fabulous, mate. Yourselves?
Yeah, bit of a cold, but, you know, it would just be typical for me to catch a cold in the middle of a bloody heat wave. Aside from that, speaking of heat waves, Dave, you appear to be melting in that sweat box of a room of yours.
I am. I've got my towel, which has already made an appearance off stage, but I will be dabbing myself during. But no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad to be back on the show. I've not been on for a while. Just looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, it's apt to have you on for this week, of course, because the big news is obviously FC Halifax Town related, which we'll come on to very, very shortly. Just want to start, Lou, with you, though, and of course, Farsley Celtic, and, you know, that's perhaps the other big news story of the week, is the fact that David Stockdale, who was, of course, the manager from midway through last season in the National League North, he was effectively managing the club and playing academy players where he could because of the situation they were in financially. Obviously, they were playing the games at Buxton. He is now going to step further from just being the club manager. He and his family have finally kind of bought the shares and have bought the club themselves.
Yeah, obviously we saw that announcement a couple of days ago. I think it surprised a few people. Came, pretty much out of nowhere. We've had quite little news coming out of the club. We spoke about it in recent weeks of what does it look like for Farsley Celtic. We knew obviously they'd been put into the North East Counties leagues based on everything that's happened and obviously the decisions to move them to that division for various reasons. And obviously we saw the news come out this week, which is obviously subject to all the legal stuff and the T's being crossed and the I's being dotted. So obviously I'm sure we'll wait for that to come through. But all being well for the Stockdale family, they can take that club as to where they want it to be. It's a big investment, probably both financially but emotionally as well. That's such a big thing to take on as a club. And, we've seen Davy Stockdale play at the highest level. He's always kept close to his roots, hasn't he, as we all know. And that was testament to his character last year to come in such a difficult situation where, the club were unable to keep some of the prized assets. They were playing away from home at Buxton. They had games at Park Avenue and Alfreton and I think Guiseley as well. So it wasn't an easy situation to walk into, and obviously he's determined to, and the family determined to hopefully take that club forward. Like I said, subject to all the stuff that's going to have to be done behind the scenes, which obviously we're not privy to. And you just hope Farsley can have a bigger and brighter future to look forward to, because they've been up there at the top of an unleague pyramid as like the way with the likes of Halifax Towns in the past. And they've got a good pedigree about themselves in a local area. So hopefully it works out. It's going to be very, very different if it does go through, from being a player and a manager to being owner of a club. It feels to me quite like a Dorking Wanderers-esque story a little bit with Mark White being the owner, maybe as a manager. It's a very different scenario, taking the club from nothing to where Dorking are, but it feels like it's a bit of a microcosm of that situation at Dorking.
Yeah, we are hoping. I spoke to George Fernley, who is one of the kind of the main kind of the face of the supporters, I suppose, at Farsley Celtic. Obviously, was involved with the away days video with Ellis Platten and the like. I've been in touch with him, and he's hopefully going to come on in a future episode. And he gave the opinion that David Stockdale may possibly himself fancy coming on and joining us at some point. So hopefully, as we were saying, because there's still a case of crossing the T's and dotting the I's, that once everything is done and the ink is dry on all the paperwork and everything's gone through, we'll hopefully be able to get them on the show in future weeks. And we wish them all the best going forward. Let's turn our attention then to FC Halifax Town. In fact, one moment, I'm not, because I've forgotten something already. We've been broadcasting for 6 minutes and I've already cocked it up. One other little side note from the non-league world that isn't in our area, but I just think it is a fantastic story, is this. This is Peterborough Sports, their third signing of the summer, and a goalkeeper, but he is the England Deaf international team goalkeeper, Sam Edwards, who has joined Peterborough Sports, who of course play in the National League North. And as I say, and I appreciate it's completely out of our area, but I just think what a fantastic story this is, Lou, for inclusivity in sport, in the full game. And obviously he's got something about him as well.
Yeah, it's a great story. You do see these stories come up in non-league, but I think this has been one of the first occasions where this has seemed to happen, where he's signed for the semi-pro club itself. It's an amazing achievement. We've also got to recognise that, I'll be honest, I've not seen Sam in action, but he must have something definitely about him, because the manager's there, Luke Steele, who's been again at the top level, ex-Man United keeper as well, so he knows what he's talking about.
He was Barnsley goalkeeper as well, wasn't he? The FA Cup ties all those years ago.
Absolutely. It's a great story. It shows exactly what, despite if you have a disability, whether you have or you haven't, you can still, progress and do as well as you possibly can, and mix it with everybody else. And that's what it's all about, especially at non-league level. I think it's a great story. Yeah, great story. And it'll be interesting to track his progress from afar and see how he gets on, because, let's be absolutely honest here. National League North is a very, very good division. This isn't a local Sunday League pub outfit, kind of Royal Oak-esque, so to speak, as a bit of a parody. But this is a proper division with proper teams in it, full-time teams. And Peterborough Sports, again, are another club who've worked themselves up. So it's a great story. I mean, I know Farsley Celtic as well. They've got a fantastic setup there with, the deaf team there as well. And they've gone on to bigger and better things and won national tournaments. So great to see, like you said, inclusivity at its best. Let's hope it works out for the kid in Peterborough Sports, because it's a bit of a trailblazing moment, I think, for the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, now we'll turn our attention to FC Halifax Town. We're going to hear from Tom Scargill. Myself and Lou spoke to him a little bit earlier on today. But initially, Dave, just kind of want to get your take on it. Obviously, we know, understandably, how gutted you were to a point for Chris Millington to make his position known and to step down as manager of FC Halifax Town. Adam Lakeland, though, has since been appointed. And look, we've been doing some chatting, haven't we, in our own group chats. So he's not something that I don't think you were overly familiar with, but is familiar to people of this area because of his time at Farsley Celtic. But on the face of it, what are your kind of initial thoughts on it, and how does it seem to have been welcomed by the fan base?
So, like you've just disclosed there, I was going to say it as well. I was a little bit like, I think I jumped in with both feet and was like, we've appointed somebody that's a complete unknown, even though I knew the Farsley Celtic link and that was going to be one of the things that was jumped on. But since we've appointed him and we've had a bit more media come out about him, I certainly know who he is now. The news of Chris Millington, leaving the club, I don't know. I don't want to say he was sacked. I don't think he was sacked. He left by mutual, it was a mutual thing. I'd have liked to have seen maybe one more season with the pitch fixed, in inverted commas. It's getting done over this pre-season. I would have liked to have seen maybe one more year out of him, but there was whispers that it could have been a health issue. He said that he was going to stay on at the club and help with the recruitment process. And as I'm sure it'll be said in Tom Scargill's interview, I don't want to sort of jump the gun with it. It's almost like a continuation of Chris Millington. Chris Millington had been involved at Curzon Ashton previously, who are a club that have come from the league that Park Avenue find themselves in now, and Liversidge. They've come up 2 leagues. They've got a tidy ground. They seem well respected within I want to call it the Tameside area of Manchester. There's a few clubs around there. Yeah, there's always good things said about that, and it's took me to take a step back to realise that Adam Lakeland was almost central to that, them progressing up those leagues. But yeah, Millington had been involved at Curzon Ashton before, and we seem to have continued on with somebody who's going to be in a similar vein to Chris Millington, a younger manager, obviously got his UEFA A licenses and such. And it's going to be a continuation of Chris Millington. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more luck. Dare I say, every football supporter feels like the team's hard done by or they have bad luck. Our few playoff campaigns we've had, there's always been something going on in the background, but that's in the past now. You know what I mean? Everybody starts on 0 points, and let's just see where we go, really.
Absolutely. Well, myself and Lou, we caught up with Tom Scargill from the Halifax Courier earlier on this morning. We'll play that out now, and then we're back with you live after this interview with Tom. Delighted to say that we are joined by Tom Scargill of the Halifax Courier. Of course, one of the biggest stories in our region in the non-league scene in the last couple of weeks or so is, of course, Adam Lakeland being appointed at FC Halifax Town. Tom, first of all, thanks for joining us, mate. Are we well?
You're welcome. Yeah, very well, thank you.
I mean, it must have been a pretty busy period. Like I thought these, end of seasons are supposed to be relaxing for you guys to have a bit of time to chill out. I'm guessing that's not been the case for you since the end of the season, of course, since Chris Millington departed.
No, I think it's kind of been on tenterhooks a bit, really. It took a couple of weeks for Millington's future to be decided, and then after that, it's kind of right, okay, who's going to replace him? You're thinking all these names about who could come in, and then the interview process, and obviously Lakeland being announced. So it's just been a bit of a snowball, really, constantly rolling throughout the summer. And it's only really now that he's been appointed that the club can actually fire the starting pistol on, okay, let's start planning for next season, and they're kind of playing catch up in that respect with a lot of clubs. But yeah, it's been... the older you get, the seasons seem to roll into each other anyway. But it particularly feels the case this summer where Millington leaving and Lakeland being appointed, it's kind of all kind of melded into one giant season, really.
So obviously we know the news, Tom, like you said, Adam Lakeland to come in replacing Millington, and Coops has obviously left recently. What are your initial thoughts? You've met Adam and Sam Walker, as you know, previously as a player. How do you see that fit going on at the Shay?
I can definitely see why he's been appointed. I think he ticks a lot of boxes for Town in that he's got a track record of being involved in promotions and playoff finishes, basically wherever he's been. He'll know the lower leagues quite well, and the divisions below Halifax, which has tended to be quite fruitful for recruitment for Halifax in recent seasons. He's got Sam Walker with him, who'll know Halifax Town as a club. His age is right. It fits the profile of Wild and Millington of being around 40, with Millington a bit older, but is at an age where he can give a lot of energy and commitment to the job. So I think he ticks a lot of boxes. He's used to working with limited budgets, which obviously help at a club like Halifax. And he's been in a situation before at other clubs where he's been in the probably the lower third of the division in terms of budgets, and proven that he can actually get the club into the top third actually in the league, which will be his task at Halifax. So I can see why he's been appointed. He's got a good track record, and he's got to show that now at the highest division he's managed at. He's never managed in this division before, so it's a step up for him. But I think so far he's been kind of welcomed fairly well by the fans. First impressions are good, I think, both ways of the club, from Lakeland and from Lakeland of the fans.
So obviously, sorry, Chris, I'll let you come in a little. But obviously, we're just talking about Lakeland. He's got a proven record of promotions. Most recently as well, did take that jump into full-time football with Kings Lynn, who, were at the wrong end of the National League North table when previously they were flying high, and obviously kind of stopped the decline of that and then pushed them up to the playoffs last season. Do you feel that's a good springboard being used to that full-time football? There's no adjustment from his side and Sam Walker's side that they can go into this job kind of ready to go, even though they are slightly behind the 8 ball in terms of recruitment and getting their squad together.
Yeah, definitely. I think he mentioned it in another interview that they went there with no contacts, didn't really know anyone, went in completely cold really, and turned things around middle of the 23-24 season, got them away from relegation, and then the following season they built a team that finished in the playoffs, and I think that work will have really impressed Halifax. When they were considering who to appoint. I think they are playing catch up. There's no doubt about that. You look at over the summer, you've been looking at clubs like Altrincham who've done their business really early and rebuilt their squad a bit, and then you're looking over at Halifax and they didn't even have a manager. So it's hard enough for Halifax to recruit a squad on the budget they've got. Never mind when they're behind other teams in that process. So he's got no time to lose, but it looks like he's come in with a fair idea of who he wants to recruit already, because they're already speaking to players, they're tabling offers for players. They're not starting from scratch because they've got kind of half a squad already. But there's no doubt they need to add to that, and they're going to replace some key players who left since Millington departed the club. So they've got some big shoes to fill in that respect. It's such an important time of the season, the summer, for recruitment, especially at a club with Halifax's constraints. And it's all going to happen very quickly. He's basically got 8 weeks until the season starts. He's got less than 3 weeks until the first pre-season game. So he's going to have to hit the ground running, get his ideas across very quickly. And it's going to be interesting how he gets on.
In terms of that recruitment, because obviously we saw kind of under Pete Wild into Millington, that kind of pattern almost of you get to the end of the season with some level of success, end up losing the 2 or 3 best players, but there was almost a perfect conveyor belt of replacing those players and it doing well, hardly seeming to affect things on the pitch. Obviously now with a new man that's coming in from the outside, how likely is it that he's going to get the backing that he will want to basically get the squad together to compete in what will be a very difficult league next season? Because I think there's going to be a lot of sides at National League level that will be eyeing up those playoff places.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of fans will be questioning. It sounds like he's got the budget already from the chairman, and his attitude is, okay, if that's what I'm working with, fair enough. Let's see what we can do with it. I think it's almost a parallel role with Halifax, where one aim is pushing for promotion, pushing for the playoffs, but the other aim is to sustain the club, find and develop good young players and sell them on for profits to feed the other side of things, if you like. So it's a difficult balancing act, running down those 2 roads, if you like, as manager. But the priority at the moment is to get a squad together that is good enough to compete in the division. I think you could argue there's perhaps some players within the current squad who could be developed and moulded to be perhaps sold on in future for a profit. But that will definitely be a part of the recruitment process, is identifying players with potential who they can develop and sell on, while also putting together a squad that's competitive enough to achieve for promotion. It's a very difficult juggling act. But I think Lakeland will probably say he's shown he can do that before at other clubs, and he's very, very hungry for the chance to do it at this level now.
You follow Town home and away, obviously, Tom, for the Courier, and obviously you've seen him at first hand for years and years now. If you were Adam Lakeland right now in his shoes, what would you want to build a squad around? What positions do you feel are critical for Lakeland and Walker to fill as soon as possible?
I think, well, it said to me that 2 areas for improvement really are home form and scoring more goals. And it's an annual problem really that Town unfortunately can't really afford 20 goal season strikers. They had one probably in the last 6 years in Billy Waters, and he got poached after a season. So it's kind of hit and miss sometimes. You take a gamble on a player who's got the potential to get 20 goals a season. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If you could unearth a gem, that'd be amazing. I think it's the spine of the team really that needs reinforcement, because Jack Evans has left since at the end of last season. He was a centre midfielder. Scott High was alongside him in central midfield. They formed a fantastic partnership. They're both no longer there. Will Smith was a key man at centre back, and he's out until later this year through injury. Adam Senior, key man at the back, left for Barnet. Ryan Galvin played as part of the back three towards the end of last season, also no longer there. So I think you're looking at the spine of the team really: a commanding centre back, a commanding midfielder, and a 20-goal season striker. So
sounds like I've got a bit of a job to do there, Tom.
A lot of work to do, yeah.
I reckon that's every National League manager in the division is exactly the exact same thing by the sounds of it.
Yeah, better get cracking.
Well, you're going to be a busy boy as well, aren't you? That's in our side. So obviously, like I say, with Lakeland coming in now, what would you say before we kind of reflect on the previous year as well, Tom, which has been successful in its own right? What would you say the expectations are for FC Halifax Town this season? We've seen them reach the playoffs twice in 2 years, kind of pushing on that, knocking on the door, aren't they, of the top 3-4. What would you say is that expectation? Is it the same, or is it just to maybe consolidate this season to Lakeland and build for the season after? What do you think is going to be the case, both from a club expectations but fans as well?
Yeah, I think you can't really tar all fans with the same brush. I think you get a spectrum where some would be more understanding than others, and I think there would be a bit of understanding that it's a new manager coming in. There's a lot of turnover, a lot of change at the club, new pitch as well being installed, not before time. So I think that with that, there would be a bit of slack in that, he needs a bit of time. We can't just expect perhaps him to pick up the baton and it to be seamless and to be in the top 7 from the start of the season and remain there all season. That is probably, I think most fans would say that's unrealistic. But I think there would also say there's nothing to say we couldn't finish in the top 7 by the end of the season. And like you say, the fact that we've finished in the top 7 the last 2 seasons, I think 4 of the last 6 seasons. So is that kind of the established pattern now? Is that enough to suggest, okay, the standard, the par, if you like, is a playoff finish? Maybe some fans would say that. I think some fans would say that's maybe overachieving with the fact that the budget is one of the lowest in the division, and maybe it should be kind of relaxed a bit to be competing for a playoff place rather than guaranteeing as a playoff place. So I think generally there would be some slack in that, let's cut him a bit of slack. Let's understand that there's nuances, there's a lot of change happening, and that's going to take time to settle down. So that might mean that it takes a bit of patience is required, if you like.
How do you kind of look at the rest of the National League? Because as I say, especially before, there's a lot of sides that we're looking at the playoffs, but when you factor in Sutton United, for example, seems to be recruiting fairly well. Yeovil, excuse me, of course, have new Dubai-based owners, so they'll be expected to be improving on last season. How do you go to assess Town, both in terms of club stature, the squad, obviously the job that Adam Lakeland's done, and the rest of the National League itself?
Yeah, it's just incredibly competitive. You look at Southend, who lost the playoff final; they'll be right up there. Forest Green, they've got a massive budget. Carlisle and York are also the 2 favourites for very good reason. So I think if Halifax do make the playoffs again, it would be a fantastic achievement. Like the other times they've done it were fantastic achievements. What Halifax do have is continuity and stability. I think they're the big ticks in their boxes, really. Obviously, changing manager is a threat to that continuity, and Lakeland has said he wants to maintain as much continuity as possible because I think he sees that it is a possible disruption to the club's stability. but I think the way that the club is run and operated will stay the same under Lakeland, so that does provide a measure of continuity. I think York will be better for having had a season of, the way that they are run now under their belts. Altrincham, as I say, they've done their business really early and they look like they're getting a good squad together. Rochdale in the playoffs last season, no reason why they can't do that again. You can go on and on and on. It is going to be a massive challenge for Halifax to get in the playoffs again. There's no reason why they can't do it, but I mean, something else that flashes up in the back of my mind as well, Chris, is what an argument for 3 up, 3 down as well. It's so long overdue. There's not a fan or anyone connected with non-league who wouldn't argue with it, but every season that goes by now, it's just crazy that there's such a bottleneck at the top of non-league where only 2 clubs go up. It's League 3 in all but name, and the fact that there isn't 3 up, 2 down, I think the longer it goes on, the more ridiculous it is, really.
Yeah, it's a matter, especially when you consider that no promoted or newly promoted National League side into League 2 has ever been relegated at the end of the first season. In the entire history since the start of the Vauxhall Conference back in, 87, 88? So you're spot on with that. I think that's going to be... obviously, we saw the statement, I think it was York, that they put out, ironically, within a few days of them losing in the playoffs, which kind of made things look a little bit sour almost. But do you think this kind of League 3, this kind of 3 up, 3 down argument is going to get stronger? The problem is, as it always seems to come back to, is you've got to rely on League 2 clubs agreeing to vote that in, and that's just turkeys voting for Christmas, potentially.
Yeah, I think it built some momentum, didn't it, over the summer and over this year at different points, but that momentum always then seems to die away and other things get on the agenda and whatever else. It's up to the National League and interested parties to keep that momentum going. I do think it's in the interests of League 2 clubs as well, in a way, because if they do go down, if they then need 3 promotion spots, they're giving themselves a better chance of going up. But that argument can be flipped on its head, and why would they vote for an extra place to be relegated? So I'd love to see it, but like you say, it's the old turkeys voting for Christmas scenario, isn't it? So maybe it needs another authority above the fray to come in and kind of implement it independently. Whether that would be possible, I don't know, but it just seems to go round and round and round without any resolution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it might come in at some point, but that might be me just wishful thinking because football changes so often, doesn't it? I think as well, Tom, that it's probably ignorant to ignore the fact of what Chris Millington and Andy Cooper did at Halifax Town as well during their spell. Like you said, probably perform near miracles of what they've done, what they've achieved with the conveyor belt of players they've worked with to establish a club in the National League as well. I'd interest, obviously, get your thoughts, and I might open it up to Chris as well, having seen a lot of National League fixtures and that expectation of playing Halifax. What did they look like under Millington? But to kick off with you, Tom, you dealt with him personally, and professionally as well. Just to give your thoughts on their time in a dugout at the Shay.
Yeah, 100%. And the 3 years under Pete before as well, he was an integral part of that. Pete was the first to recognise the part that Millington played in his 3 years there, and Millington arguably took it on further, certainly at least maintained the standards that were set under Wild. Obviously an FA Trophy win and 2 playoff finishes. I think he would argue he probably wrung as much as he possibly could out of the club and out of the squads he had at his disposal. They always fell short in the playoffs, be it through fatigue or injuries or whatever else, because it takes so much for Halifax to get in the playoffs because of the constraints, because of the challenges they face. They have to give absolutely everything to get in the playoffs, that usually there's nothing left when they get in there. But yeah, I mean, fantastic people to deal with from my point of view. Really cared, really passionate about the club, gave absolutely everything, worked 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. And, had their critics who said that the football wasn't entertaining enough, they didn't score enough goals. But I think you could argue back with the fact, going back again to Halifax not being able to afford 20-goal season strikers, So the alternative is you start from the back, and what's perhaps easier to do is build a solid foundation, organise a team that's defensively stable and difficult to beat, and then you don't have to score as many goals to win games and get points. That's maybe simplifying it a bit, but by and large, that was perhaps the approach, and that might be something that Lakeland follows suit with as well. And it does make sense. Obviously, everyone would love to win games 5-4 and score loads of goals, but if you can't afford, Regan Linney's or whatever else, Ollie Pearce's, what's your alternative is to look at things a bit differently. Yes, there was scope for more entertainment, more goals, more shots on target. There's no doubt it was head scratching and eye clawing at stages watching them, but you can't argue with the end result of a Wembley win and 2 playoff finishes, and hopefully he gets a shot somewhere else. Pete Wild deserved his chance at the end of his time at Halifax, and it's no different to Chris and Andy, and it'd be great to see them get a chance in the Football League.
I'm going to ask from a purely kind of fans way of looking at it, because it's all hypothetical, but do you think that with the right backing and budgets, Millington could have got that side into League Two?
I think so, and like with Pete as well at different points. In his last season, they were going great guns, needed reinforcements. Looking back, maybe didn't get the quality that they needed just to give that extra push, and ended up kind of slumping out of the playoffs. And I think at least one of the seasons in the Millington, you could argue at different times they needed just that extra push of 1 or 2 really quality reinforcements mid-season, towards the end of the season. Had they got that, I think they could have really been a serious contender. Certainly last season, if they'd have kept everyone fit, not even anything to do with extra recruitment, if they'd have kept everyone fit, there's no doubt they'd have had a serious chance. So luck comes down to it as well, which Halifax don't really seem to have much of, especially when it comes to cup runs. But I think there was potential there over the last 6 seasons, and both Pete and Chris, that we could have got promoted, which does offer hope that it can still be done, but it needs a lot of things to go right at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. One final question, then we can't kind of get you on and not talk about the transfer window and the summer transfers and the rumour mill. Is there anything that kind of caught your eye that obviously with Adam Lau taking the job, are you hearing any names mentioned, and how soon are you hoping that you'll be able to get busy with articles on new signings and 25 goal a season strikers?
Well, he's not ruled out going back to Kings Lynn for players, and there's a midfielder called Cody Johnson who's apparently ripped it up a bit in the National League North last season. So I think a few fans are. Yes, I think so.
Yeah, he came to Rochdale briefly for a short loan spell. It didn't quite work out, but I heard they'd done quite well at Kings Lane.
So I think a few fans are putting 2 and 2 together and hoping they've got 4 with that. There might be 1 or 2 others from Kings Lynn that end up at the Shay. I mean, if they could get Scott High back, who is without a club at the moment, I think from what I understand, that'd be a fantastic signing. But again, won't be surprised to see him in League Two. I don't know. It's a bit. Sometimes the managers are left field, and sometimes the players are left field as well with Halifax. So we'll have to wait and see. But they certainly need to get the skates on. They're back in pre-season training at the end of the month, so they've basically got a week and a half, I think, to get some signings through the door, and then it's the first friendly on July the 5th, so they've got no time to lose. There's not they're covered for goalkeepers, but other than that, there's not really an area of the squad that doesn't need strengthening. So hopefully they'll get plenty of players through the door soon.
Yeah, and that pre-season friendly, I think is it Bradford Park Avenue, that first friendly? You'll be seeing Sam Johnson up front at this, right?
Yeah, it's nice that Sam's sticking around. He'll reach 10 years at the club, I think, during the next season, which is absolutely incredible. Very rare in this day and age that you get that kind of loyalty from any players. Fantastic to see him sticking around. What a legend!
Absolutely. Excellent, Tom. Thanks for taking the time out of your morning to come on and join us here on the West Yorkshire Football Show, mate. We'll look forward to catching up with you again soon.
No worries.
There we go, then. That was our chat this morning with Tom Scargill from the Halifax Courier. And obviously, it was quite an in-depth interview, Dave. I mean, I guess we'll open it up to you, really, in terms of, was there anything in there that kind of surprised you, anything that you wanted to pick up on in particular? I mean, on the face of it, from Tom having already met Adam Lakeland and kind of got a bit of a sense of what he's about as a person, it all seems pretty glowing and bodes well from what Tom's had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not now that I've sort of learned a bit more about Adam Lakeland, I'm not particularly disappointed with the appointment. Tom's covered most of the things that I would have also said, where I think Adam Lakeland's even said in his own interviews and certainly in Tom's Courier articles, he's always seemed to. Tom did a Courier article with Kings Lynn's correspondent, and he said that Lakeland struggles to attract goal scorers or doesn't have the funds, so it's very much welcome to the club. It'll just be the same. We didn't score a lot of goals last season. I'm going to try and not reflect on last season too much, but once we got into a stride, there was a period just after New Year where we had a fully fit squad. We beat Sutton 3-0 away. We went 2-0 up in 2 minutes at York. We got into a stride and it just come to a complete halt with the injuries. I totally agree with Tom. I've been on the show before. I said if we'd have had a full strength team, the way I would have put it is we certainly wouldn't have lost 4-0 at Oldham, put it that way. We may still have lost. The playoffs are still a lottery, but we would not have lost in the manner that we did. I'm quite happy. Like I say, I'm happy with the appointment. And one other player I want to highlight now that I believe we have signed up already is somebody we brought in late last season, Sean Tarrimer, his name is. I've seen him be employed in defence and midfield. I think he came as a defender. He was released by West Ham at the beginning of the season before last, but we signed him, I think, February, March, once the injuries started to come in, but he was signed permanently. He weren't a loan signing. I think we're going to lose the services of Josh Emmanuel. Tom's mentioned Scott High. I think with Scott High, possibly what Tom's had to leave off what he said is the only chance we're going to get Scott High is if by the end of this transfer window he doesn't have a Football League club or a better National League club lined up. We're probably bottom of his list, or his list of, should I say, maybe his agent's list of suitors, or he's got a full pre-season to essentially put himself, not in the shop window because he's done that with his performances. He has had 2 injuries while he's been with the club, though, that will have hindered his progress, or I'd imagine that's something that other prospective clubs that would look to sign him will have made note of. He's had 2 injuries. I believe he returned to Huddersfield for his rehab, etc. But it's just something possibly in the background with Scott High that gives me hope that we would sign him. He'd know that he'd play, well, would he? Adam Lakeland might not play him every week, but for me, he would be a first-team starter every week, and that's the only thing we can kind of offer. That's the only ace we have, really, like in terms of bringing these young players on. It's been said over the years the same thing. We put them in the shop window. They're usually on shorter-term contracts, and that's how the club operates.
I'm going to be the voice of encouragement here for as regards kind of Town fans and Scott High in particular, Lou, because there's something to be said about loan moves, that you see players come to the end of the loan moves, you expect them to kind of move on and go higher, and actually that affiliation with the club and that place where they feel comfortable. You've only got to look, Lou, at Dylan Marcandy having been released by Blackburn Rovers. So much talk of him after that loan spell at Chesterfield last season in League Two, of him going to many League One clubs, and he's signed today back at Chesterfield in League Two. There's hope that Scott High might look at this given midway through this period and think, you know what, the grass might not be green elsewhere. If Halifax can make an offer that he finds acceptable, it could work out for him.
Yeah, it's got to work out for the club, like Dave said. But I think also when you're a player of his age and the quality that he obviously has shown in glimpses when he's been fit, a kid of his age needs to play. It's as simple as that. He needs to play regular games, first-team football, at a level that is a very good level as a National League. Yes, would he want to probably stay in a Football League? Probably would, no doubt about it. But then runs the risk of being a squad player. May not be playing week in, week out, whereas at Halifax, He probably feels appreciated by a lot of the fans there. Obviously, the changing manager would have an effect because I'm not sure how much Adam Lakeland will know of him in terms of his character reference. He'll have known about his ability, like a lot of managers at this level will do. But does he know exactly what the person is like? And I'm guessing he will be doing homework and that as we speak. But yeah, a kid of his age, it's tough. I've said this before that, you know, when you're released as a pro at this level, or even if as academy at a pro club, it's a very difficult thing to take. And I don't think that can be underestimated from a fan's perspective or an outsider's perspective, because, you know, for some of these kids, they've been in that system or that club for a number of years. It is their home. And when you kind of shown the door politely, it's a bit of a culture shock. It's where do I go next? What do I do? It's a change of habit, and we're all creatures of routine, aren't we? So for somebody like Scott High, just needs to play regular games. Simple as that. I think he will get that at Halifax at the moment, the way the club is set up. And I'm not saying it's a desperate need, but it feels it's getting quite close to that point where Halifax just need players in through the door, good quality players, and he certainly fits that bill for me.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, sorry, Chris, I have cut you off there, is he played the last 20 minutes of the playoff game against Oldham, and should he be holding out to not come back to the club, why would he risk coming back from an injury to play half an hour in a game where he could have broken down again or be one misjudged tackle away from being injured again? Like, that gave me like a little bit more hope that the door certainly, I'd like to think the door certainly isn't closed on him, but it's just, what is he going to find? You know, what's going to come his way during the summer? Hopefully we'll get him. Like I said, I think you've raised a lot of good points. We offer I'd like to think even under Lakeland, we offer him like first team football every week. I mean, we extended Sam Johnson's contract officially without a manager in between Chris Millington and Adam Lakeland. So Adam Lakeland's inheriting a decent goalkeeper at National League level. I've obviously sung his praises on many a show, and, you know, Tom did a little bit there at the end. I don't want to go as far as to say he's the best goalkeeper in the National League, but he's always in them top 4 or 5 spots every year. It'll be his 9th season this year, because he kind of signed towards, it was November 2015 he came on loan, but he had a year at the beginning of that season and a little bit at the beginning of the next season where he didn't play, so there's kind of a year in between. But I'd be happy just to go along with yes, it's been 10 years and we forget about the fact he was at Port Vale and then on loan at Gateshead in the first half of the 16-17 season. I mean, he's going to tick over. He's on 435 appearances or something like that, and he's got 146 clean sheets in that time. You know what I mean? His record's very, very good.
Absolutely. Just want to bring in a couple of comments. Shame forever. He says he would like to see Luca Thomas sign permanently. Of course, he was let go by Leeds United in the summer. Famous, of course, last season with his loan spell at Halifax for the almighty goal that he scored. I think it was at Wealdstone, where it was inside his consolation. Own half. Yeah, what a goal!
It's a shame it doesn't win a match, but
if you're going to score a consolation, what better way to do it?
Might as well do it that way, yeah.
And then just to follow up on that as well, Shaman also says it all depends down to how much Bosworth will give Adam. And actually, this is a fair point, and kind of this is the way I look at FC Halifax, is that there's a lot of potential for me within FC Halifax as a club. However, it just needs a bit more backing financially from the outside to compete, because I say, and as we said to Tom as well, like next season, the National League, I think is going to be a really, really different animal. There's going to be a lot of sides, I think, in those playoff places. And I think you run the risk that if you don't push the boat a little bit and give it out Adam Lakeland that little bit more than perhaps Wild and Millington had in recent season, that actually there is a real risk that Avenue could be swallowed up by a lot of those other sides, and rather than being a side making the playoffs, are a side finishing 12th, 13th, 14th instead.
Yeah, they could be. I mean, the argument for scoring less goals last season, somebody made it today on our forum. They said something like, somebody scored 76 goals. I think it was Aldershot. They finished 15th. You know, somebody who finished 8th scored 20 goals more than us. Both of those teams would have swapped positions with us in a heartbeat, score 50 goals and get a top 7 finish.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what your question kind of were there, Chris, actually. Forgotten what you just asked.
From a fan's perspective, really, just how much would you like to see David Bosworth? And I appreciate he's always been about sensible approach and sustainability. But just if you're really going to get the potential out of FC Halifax Town, there's got to come a point where you just kind of push that boat a little bit more budget wise to try and get, that potential proven goal scorer, for example.
Yeah, I think there's a 3-tiered wage structure in place that doesn't really get broken. There was rumours, and I have to say it is totally rumours, that we had Mike Fondop on loan about 6 seasons ago. Obviously, he's just been promoted to Oldham, came back to haunt us in the playoffs and was always going to do that. That we had him on loan from Guiseley, actually.
Yeah.
There was a rumour that he wanted to always have it written in his contract that he earned 30% more a week than our highest earner. And I seem to think at the time it was like, we just cannot honour this. This might be total pie in the sky, but it's something that I've heard.
Yeah.
It's the sort of contract stipulation that we've known about, that we sort of hear about publicly. So I think what frustrates fans, especially those of the older end that were pre-2008, that are my age, maybe 30 plus, is we've seen owners come in and like save the club from liquidation when they first went out of the Football League. I think 10 businessmen all put £10,000 in. I think it's the idea that if those old owners would have had the 2 Wembley visits, where we've won both times, we've had these playoffs, they'd have absolutely like done anything to have that chance to be able to promote the club from those successes. And they feel a bit like our season ends and the club almost just closes for 3 months. It'd be like a few weeks before the season starts. It's like season tickets are on sale. Oh, we're kicking off now. Like there's like a gap in between where they release obviously signings, and we always seem to do as business after the 1st of July. We seem to, again, that's a very David Bosamwood thing about, I think Tom even used the same quote. He likes to sort of dot the I's and cross the T's and all that kind of thing. So registrations for players, it tends to be after the 1st of July. We don't really announce anyone after that. On top of that, I think the frustration is we can't have any home games for friendlies. We can't have like Leeds at home or a money spinner, so people will be like, oh look, York have got, maybe even Leeds, like York have got Leeds and it's going to be a sellout, there's going to be like 9,000 there. We can't do that because of the pitch. Hopefully once the pitch is sorted, we might be able to do it. I don't know, but we've had 5 or 6 seasons where every away game is away from home, and then any against higher league opposition. I think we've played the likes of Fleetwood at least. They're behind closed doors at training complexes, so fans are frustrated that we're going to places like Clitheroe and, places like that. I'm not going to say Park Avenue because, it's Park Avenue's like what used, again, I'm getting onto another thing. I'm going to end up just going on and on and on. We used to open we used to open our seasons against Brighouse. Brighouse was always our opening game, first week in July, roasting hot. We'd tend to put like 6 or 7 past them, and people really, really just enjoyed going to Brighouse for a friendly, and it stopped. Being involved with Brighouse, I've heard their side of it. I don't really want to say anymore, but it ended. There was certain conversations, I think, between 2 clubs where they got to a stage where this friendly couldn't be a thing anymore, and Brighouse went out and they were playing like Huddersfield and Bradford City 11s and getting 1,000 at, I don't know what the ground's even officially called now, the ground where Brighouse play in Hove Edge, 1,000 people, 1,000 plus in that ground. I know they did that for Bradford. Great for like sales at the bar, food, can set them up for, I'm talking to people who know this. Yeah. So, I think the frustrations are at stuff. I think supporters feel like he's blown a lot of opportunities to build on the success. Like they've targeted Bromley. Like Bromley have gone up into the Football League and they seem to win the FA Trophy. They subsidise season tickets to next year and they built themselves up to be better. They got a little bit better every season. Like they knocked on the door of the playoffs, then they got in the playoffs, then I think they got in the playoffs again, and then they won them. Like they progressed and progressed and progressed every year. Whereas we've gone into our last 3 playoff campaigns with a massive grey cloud over the top of us, and it's like, it's frustrating. Yes, it's great to get there, but there's always been something where it's like we're part of like we've got like a 1% chance of winning this. So I think that's the main frustration. Look at some of the money that's been thrown around at this level by like your Wrexhams, your Stockports. I think Carlisle, maybe not to a degree. I think Carlisle, they have been in the
make no mistakes, Carlisle are going to spend an absolute sodding fortune. Like the fact that they've already been able to just go out and bring Regan Linney in from Altrincham. who was very happy at Altrincham, very settled, but the fact that money talks, and they'll be able to get him in as early as they can, says, "Oh, make no mistake, Carlisle are going to spend a shed load."
I'd like to hope we'll sign Luke Thomas. Getting back to the actual question that you popped up, I'd like to think, again, like Scott High, he knows that we're a concrete, solid offer that he can always fall back on. He's got all summer to weigh up his options, but both Scott High and Luke Thomas know that they've got a solid backup plan. And I'm going to describe it as that. Where they're two players' backup plans, we're going to have to spend, look at some of the money that are getting paid. Ollie Pearce won't be on like £1,000 a week. He'll be on 3-4 times that, probably plus goal bonuses. There's some crazy money floating around at this level. I think this is the first season where there's going to be a 4 or 5 side race. If Carlisle don't end up sprinting in front of everybody, and I can honestly see it being quite an open league this year. I think this isn't going to be a season where I think the top 7 are going to pull away from everybody. I think it's going to be, by Christmas, New Year, I think there's already going to be a 7-8 point gap between 7th and 9th. I think there's going to be a crop that's going to go.
It will be interesting to see how it pans out, though, because for me, you could make a case genuinely for, I think, half the teams in this league to even make the playoffs. I think the title race will come down to York and Carlisle, but time will tell. Before we kind of finish all together on FC Halifax and kind of move to rounding up anything else from our region, Lou, we've got some pretty big news, haven't we?
Huge news. Yeah, I think it's a really good coup for us.
I see you've done that. It is a coup for us. So, and one for the FC Halifax Town fans as well. So next week on the show, we will be speaking to Chris Millington and his assistant, Andy Cooper. We will be pre-recording the interview on, early next week. So, Town fans, if you've got any questions you want to put to your floor manager at Chris Millington and to his assistant, Andy Cooper, you can get them in on X. Is the easiest way to do so. We'll make sure that when there's no expletives in them, and if we think they're decent enough, we'll get them asked to Chris Millington and Andy Cooper. They will be joining us here on the West Yorkshire Football Show. We are very thankful to them both for giving up their time to join us on the show. But it will be interesting, I think, to say the least, to get their side of things. Hey, Lou?
Yeah, it's a really good interview for us as a channel, and also to get their side of the story and reflect on their successful time at Halifax Town. We know what they've done in the past 3 years there. We've heard from Tom, we've heard from obviously David over the past year or two as well. Listen, they've been part of a bit of a legacy. They have left something there for Halifax Town fans to grab hold of and cherish those memories. There's not many teams that will go to Wembley, full stop, and they've been able to give that memory a couple of times and also win a trophy as well, which is massive. It's huge. And yeah, unfortunately, just weren't able to get over the line. But we know that how well respected they are in the game, full stop. We know that they're still doing a lot of work outside at the moment, and been speaking to him this week to try and organise it, and having to agree to join us for the show, I think is a massive thing. It's like I say, I think it shows that we feel trusted as well as a channel, that they're able to get their point across. In a really good, respectful way. And, I think we want to find out, as well as, a lot of Halifax Town and non-league fans in the area just want to kind of hear about what it's like to be, in a home dugout in such a pressurised environment. We don't get that luxury. We can sit from afar and commentate, report, stand on the terraces and scream and shout and talk in a pub over a few drinks and stuff. But actually, what does it mean to be in that hot seat when, the tough gets going? What's it like when it's really rock and rolling as well? And they've been at both ends of that. So yeah, it'd be really interesting. Now, obviously, that news has been confirmed with Adam Lakeland. That's how we've been able to get them both on the show next week. So yeah, encouraging people to get the questions in. Like I say, we'll try and work through as much as we can. But it'd be really good for everybody to join us next week on the show.
Yeah, very much so. And Dave, I'm sure, again, having been a Town fan, obviously for many years, but in particular those last 3 years under Chris Millington and Andy Cooper, you'll obviously be, I guess, as intrigued as a lot of Town fans will, just to hear what they have to say, to get their side of where things are now, and yeah, kind of what their kind of plans for the future are as well.
Yeah, I've said it numerous times on this show, like whatever happens with Chris Millington post Halifax Town, he's always just going to have a future in the game. As I want to just say, as something, he will be in English football, world football. Dare I even say world football? He may even go abroad. He will be involved in the sport of football for a very, very long time. I've absolutely no doubt. And so will Andy Cooper. I mean, the pair of them have been involved in football since, I think Chris Millington, Adair says, in his late 40s. He's been involved since, I think he may have even been in his early 20s. You know what I mean? He's already done 20 years. They've both got a future in football. It's as simple as that. Yeah. I'm not sure. Could be anything in a coaching, managerial role. I mean, who's to say that once a couple of League Two teams don't get off to the best of starts and they're, looking for a change, it could be those two.
Well, this is exactly it. This is exactly it. And because as you quite rightly say, there will be League Two sides that will part ways with their managers early doors next season. And Lou, looking at the job that obviously Chris Millington and Andy Cooper did at Town over the last 3 years, and in particular the constraints they were working under, it'll make you wonder if League Two sides with bigger budgets will be able to offer them an opportunity to kind of go on to bigger things in terms of certainly bigger budgets, bigger stature, etc., and progress their careers through a League Two club.
The thing for me that stands out a lot about both Millington and Cooper is that they've built a team at Halifax which has seen players move on to arguably bigger and better things up the football pyramid as well. They've had that conveyor belt of players that have moved upwards, more often than not. But it's also that for their own CV, listen, regardless of any kind of line of work, whether it's football or not, you want to kind of make yourself look as good as you possibly can and achieve the best you can. And it's the same with them. They've given some of these young kids, the chance of being a full-time professional, which is massive, not only in non-league or the National League, but, in the AFL, we've seen some of those players come through, like Jesse Deborah, etc., who've gone on to massive things, up in League One, League Two. So I think from their perspective, yes, they'll be looking to see what opportunities are next, whether they go as a duo or whether they go their separate ways. Football's a funny game, as we know, so it could end up both going in different directions, or like you say, they could go to an AFL team and join forces together. I think, from Chris Millington's perspective, probably when you've had a bit of a shot at being number one, it's probably hard to get away from that.
Yeah, it'd be hard to kind of go back, wouldn't it?
It's kind of that metaphorical drug where you kind of go back to it. It's that buzz of being number one. So I expect that to be probably the case for Chris Millington. Or there might be an opportunity, like you say, massively up the football pyramid. You're talking Premier League, Championship, or like Dave really fairly mentioned there, maybe abroad. Like you might become a number two at a really big club because he's got them connections, and Andy Cooper as well. He's worked across the world as well, with the connections that he's got through his academy work, with all his program work. So they've definitely got the connections and the links, and I think it'll be fascinating to hear from him next week. And like I say, I think it's a big thing for us to get him on, and like I say, for them to trust us to have that insight and interview, because I know that obviously we've seen Tom has spoken to him as well and reported on him, but there's people out there that I'm sure would love to speak to him. So it's a big thing for us to get him on board. And don't get me wrong, we'll be promoting everywhere as much as you can possibly see. So yeah, to everyone who's watching, spread the word, get your comments and questions in, because I think it'll be an interesting interview with him for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up then, Lou, any other business, I guess, across our region? We'll start with Guiseley / Bradford Park Avenue, because in particular one man that has gone from Nethermore to the Horsefall is Joe Ackroyd. Meanwhile, at Nethermore, a couple of signings that have been or contract re-signings that have been retained in the form of John Lafudu and Jamie Spencer.
We quickly go to Ian's question though that he put in about just going back to Farsley. Have we had any news on where they're playing?
We don't know.
Not sure. Okay, yeah, carry on then. That's it. Yeah.
He seems to have a knack, does he, of asking the question about 30 seconds after we moved on from the topic, sadly, and he did that earlier.
I just thought it was a really good question.
Yeah, I think the plan is to go back to Throstle Nest in due course, but I guess at the moment, because everything is just up in the air with the takeover for Farsley, that everything will come out in the coming days.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that got picked up a little bit around the week was, this new X account, FC Farsley Sports Club, which kind of got set up. And, was talking about, I think we've even posted a couple of hours ago, whoever runs that account of, on the 22nd of June, welcome to Frostlenest, not the Citadel anymore. So, again, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. We're only seeing what's on social media. But I think, like I say, when all those legal stuff is all done and dusted, I'm sure we'll know a little bit more. But listen, we've said it, haven't we, for how many months, going on nearly a year now. Your football club, you just want them to be home, don't you, as quickly as you possibly can. And there's probably got to be a little bit of work done there at Frostlenest to get that sorted, and hopefully we can do that soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Go on then, Luke. Geisley / Bradford Park Avenue / Geisley B, whatever your official name is now. Obviously, Joe Ackroyd became the third man to make the move from Nethermore to the Horsefall. And then, as I mentioned as well, Jamie Spencer and John LaFudu renewing their contracts at Nethermore.
Yeah, so let's begin with Geisley, because for higher up the pyramid. LaFudu, one of the quickest men in non-league, especially in this area. I think is a really good retention for Geisley. Plays right back, right wing as well. He's very versatile and offers an outlet that, does threaten a lot of teams. In that league, when you've got the likes of LaFudu and potentially Birchall on either flank, that's terrifying from a pace perspective. Any defence in that league and any non-league situation would fear the pace of them and acceleration of what they can get past them. So I think it's a really shrewd retention. Jamie Spencer, I'm pleased to know Spencer really well.
Yeah,
I've seen he's had a tough time with it. A really good kid. Had a horrific ACL injury, and went through rehab through that. Ended up at Ponty for a little bit, and obviously has gone back to Geisley under Bowers and Bosch. 27 years old. He's still, in his peak age, really. He's trusted by the guys at Geisley to do the job, which, in the centre midfield, with a loss of Prince Ekpolo to Avenue, feels like Spender could really, cement that spot in the centre of the park for the Lions there. Again, another good signing. I see also retains Sam Bentley as well, who probably get a little bit more of a look in as a really good squad player for the lads down at Nethermore. So, yeah, some really good news coming out of Geisley, despite this, departures to Avenue. Let's be honest, Joe Ackroyd, the latest one is what you've mentioned. Real busy, energetic footballer, left-footed. He's a bit of a, to use the analogy, a bit of a Yorkshire Terrier, isn't he? In that centre of the park, diminutive is your words like to describe him.
You could have gone with Tyke, seeing as he came through at Barnsley.
Yeah, very good. I like that. Yeah, very good. He's can play a box to box, but he can also real battle in midfield. He's played at Buxton, and that's how Craig knows him from his loan spells there. Gone to Geisley, then Geisley, you were on loan at Warrington last season. There were rumours I think Warrington were potentially still looking around, but depending on a travel situation from where he is, I think it's a great signing. You look at the options that, again, Avenue have that they've bought from Geisley, Jamila Beale, Prince Ekpolo, Joe Ackroyd. Arguably, Beale and Ackroyd, probably squad players in the right. Ekpolo, very different, probably one of the first names on that team sheet from a Geisley perspective. And Avenue keep just signing players like we've seen at the bottom of it on our tick. They've also signed Rico Kilburn from Golka. That's added on that left-hand side. At the time of announcing that on our show last week, Louis Charlton had also signed, and Jack McCourt's become a permanent signing, has been on the coaching staff. So there's a lot of turnover there. Craig Elliott came out, did a bit of a short interview. I know that Avenue are back in pre-season next week. There's a lot of teams that are already into the first, second, third sessions. I think Jamie Price has got the lads in at Fackley for the second one, maybe tomorrow or yesterday. I know that Livis had started this week as well. So there's a lot of work to do for a lot of teams. We're speaking about Halifax, they're playing Avenue in 2 weeks' time. That's how close pre-season is. There's a lot happening. There's not much on the signing front in the past week, as you've probably seen in that ticker below. A few signings in the NCL for Route 1 and South Leeds as well. But you'd expect that to ramp up a little bit more. Trialists going in. You will see trialist A, trialist B for families in full force at this time of the year. A lot of these trialists will be, probably floating between a lot of clubs. Some will have 2 or 3 clubs during this pre-season to earn themselves a contract. A lot of these managers want to have their squad settle down as much as they can and get the business done early. But some clubs, for whatever reason, may be out of their control, or it's just bad luck, where they might have to do business very late in the day. And now that second transfer window's opened, higher up the pyramid, that will, kind of a domino effect into the leagues come the end of that transfer window, in September. So the business will ramp up, like I say, but it won't just stop. It will be ongoing. And once you see, like I say, the friendlies get going, trialist being announced, trialist A scores 5 goals, everybody wants them to sign him, even though they've no idea who he is, where they've come from. It makes it exciting, and the joy of going to non-league friendlies is working out who these trialists are. It's one of the things where you'll see, fans going to these games going, I'm recognising from somewhere, and getting the internet and try and Google and find out exactly, where they've been, and it's always a bit of fun of pre-season for me.
Yeah, it might even be easy to do nowadays. All you have to do is take a picture of said trialist, and you've got that fancy technology where you can circle the face and
possibly
scours the internet. I mean, it's frankly creepy technology, to be honest, but in this case, for trialists, it might be quite useful.
Yeah.
One of the other little news from the NCL, Glasshoughton Welfare, Johnny Bruce has gone in there as manager to replace Christian Fox.
Yeah, that just got announced earlier today as well. Glasshoughton will be definitely looking for a better season than what they did last season. Again, in that kind of situation, a manager comes in, especially at that level, without any disrespect, you do see a lot of, turnover of players. So again, it's one to just keep an eye on. Glasshoughton Welfare have been there a couple of times, a really friendly club. They'll want to push on and do well, but there's so much competition in that league. As we mentioned recently, there's clubs coming from that northwest region coming into the North East Counties League, the likes of Ilkley, that we've seen, Leeds University, Doncaster have come in this as well. Wakefield are probably going to go big, and we've seen big in the signings that have made. So it's going to be another tricky season, and, the likes of Glasshoughton are going to be fighting out against the likes of Anfield Welfare and the like to attract players from that area. It's, it's an area that is relatively untapped, kind of at Castleford area, so it'll be interesting to see how they get along, but hopefully they get the players in and get the business done as quick as they can, because these clubs will be having a very tough pre-season. They're facing potentially North East Counties Premier, Division 1 Premier outfits, so they're not having any, inverted commas, any easy fixtures at all. They're playing teams above them, so that's always difficult to gauge. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, I've just been looking on the Northern Counties East website, and they have a very good, a very up-to-date list of pre-season friendlies for all the sides across their leagues, and we're not too far away. A couple of the sides start as soon as the 28th of June, so a week on Saturday.
Yeah.
You look at Tuesday the 1st, and that's when a hell of a lot of sides across our region kick in with the first pre-season. So we are not far away.
Not far away at all. We would urge a lot of people to just keep checking the club's social media as well. The season ticket prices being announced and numbers that are being signed up, especially the friendlies. We know that Emily, our friends at Emily, have got some big games there. Welcoming Huddersfield Town, Lee Grant's first game, which is a big tie for them to, make the most of that and welcome the Terriers down there. Barnsley as well going down there. So there's a lot of fixtures going to be happening. So yeah, just keep checking out the club's social media, because they will be publicising these fixtures, and it's important that people do attend these, because it means a lot to these clubs. We mentioned earlier that some of these ties can set up these clubs for maybe half a season, potentially the full season, and it gives them a little bit of extra pocket money to compete. I'm saying it, so for Avenue, the season tickets have been dramatically slashed to 75 quid for an adult, and that's there's been over, I think, about 180 season tickets, which is one of the highest in a long time. So the appetite is there at non-league, especially with the rising prices, which again I've seen in the national press for some of our top teams. So the appetite is there, and I think people are, because of the way that the economic situation is, and having to look and save their pennies and still want to watch football. It's still there for everybody to go and watch, and if that has to be non-league, the non-league community absolutely welcomes people into it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the cheapest and for me one of the best ways of getting out to local football, supporting your local team. So yeah, if we get a chance, we'll try and put together a bit of a pre-season friendlies guide ourselves maybe over the course of the coming weeks. But I mean, usually, Lou, you're well on top of these sorts of things usually. But
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Going on.
I know, too much going on, too many fingers and too many pies, but I will commit on the show here and now. I will do it for next week. There you go.
There we go. Well, What have you done? Good question. We will leave it there. We'll finish it up now, an hour and 15. And big thank you to everyone that's been in touch on, again, the comments in Shaman Forever, Andrew Pinfield as well, even our very own Stephen Downs, who says, up the town. I'm assuming that must be about FC Halifax Town, of course. There isn't any other relevant towns nearby.
Yeah, it will
So
be.
it must, yeah. So yeah, big thank you to everyone that's got involved. A big thank you, of course, to Tom Scargill as well for joining us this morning with the interview that we played out. If you've joined us late and you want to go back, do check it out on YouTube. We'll probably put the interview out as well as a standalone piece as well. And of course, the big news for next week is that FC Halifax Town's former manager, Chris Millington, and his assistant, Andy Cooper, will be joining us on the show next week. So if you've got any questions, get them into us between now and the weekend, and we will put them to the former FC Halifax Town gaffer next week. For myself, though, and from Lewis and from Dave, for a big pleasure to have you on as well, Dave. We know you can't make it quite as often
Finger
as you'd like
guns.
to, but it's always good to get you on. Always good to have you on, mate. So, yes, big thank you to you as well. But
Always a
enjoy the rest
pleasure.
of your Wednesday evening, and we will be we'll see you soon here on the West Yorkshire Football Show.